in perpetuity. But this is definitely going to be a case that ties in with the sort of craptastic job that DCYF has been doing, in Indiana. So while this is, mainly focused on Indiana, it's definitely a case that anyone who's watched the Tim's case from over on Megan Fox's channel, this is definitely a case that I will be covering, and it's heartbreaking. So buckle in. We will do a palate cleanser after this, but it's definitely one I want to get out there. There was no secret. A family of 5-year-old Kinsley Welty files a lawsuit against DCS. Now, there's an editor note. This is obviously going to contain some description of what this little baby girl went through. It's not going to be easy, but I hope you do stick with me. Every day, the grandfather of 5-year-old Kinsley Welty questions how the Indiana Department of Child Services could have failed on multiple occasions to notice the CA that was happening to his grandchild. The signs of abuse were obvious, Brian Welty said. She was mostly skin and bone by the time the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department found her inside of a closet on her mother's Southwest Side home near death on April 9th, 2024. Kinsley was forced to live in the closet with little to no food or water. Now, the Welty family, along with attorneys Cohen Malad and Snyderman Law, have filed 2 lawsuits, one on behalf of the girl's grandfather and one on behalf of her father, against DCS on November 6, 2025. Now, their goal is to discover how the system failed Kinsley and to hold the department and its staff legally responsible for her death. Quote, "This abuse was no secret to Indiana's Department of Child Services," end quote. Gregory Laker, an attorney at Cohen Malad, said during a November 7th press conference. Only by determining what happened and why people who were supposed to help instead failed Kinsley will we be able to answer the family's question. Now, the Indianapolis Star, which is our local kind of paper, did reach out to Indiana Department of Child Services about these lawsuits. Now, the department noted that it couldn't comment on these specific cases, but it did defend the department's caseworkers. Yes, they routinely left her in the care with her mother, who left her locked in a closet without food and water, but they're excellent workers. They just missed a scotch. Quote, "Family managers are often put in challenging situations and must make difficult life or death," underline the death, and yes, I'm reading them for filth, decisions in child safety. Yeah, tell that to the, scores of children you either lost or unalived this year, Indiana DCYF. The department's statement said, "We appreciate the complexities of the decisions they must make and support them in keeping Hoosier children safe. You did wonderful job for Kinsley, you asshats." Excuse my French. Now, Laker and the other attorneys believe that DCS may have prematurely closed 3 of the 6 anonymous complaints that had been brought against Kinsley's mother, Toni McClure. According to an affidavit, the DCS case managers closed 3 of the investigations without even looking into Kinsley, not even seeing the child. Now, attorneys believe that case managers misused the Safety Assessment Closure Team, or SAFE Act, a policy created to expedite the closure of low-risk cases, despite not having properly investigated those 3 claims. "We think that the statute was abused purposely in this case," Laker said. "These allegations typically take a month to 45 days to 60 days to investigate and make a thorough determination whether a child is safe. These allegations were closed in 2 days, in 10 days, and in 2 days, with a sign-off by the supervisor indicating that Kinsley was safe." Now, regarding the other 3 cases, DCS managers conducted an assessment on Kinsley's siblings after the department received anonymous tips about their condition. Now, case managers were able to see her siblings during their assessment. Now, attorneys argue in the complaint that if DCS managers had conducted a thorough investigation of all of the allegations, they would have caught the neglect of the 5-year-old before she passed away. Now, in 2024, Marion prosecutor finally charged McClure with murder, criminal confinement, battery of a person under the age of 14. Now, a prosecutor announced that he is seeking a lifetime sentence for McClure, which is much higher than Indiana calls for generally for these cases. So just for a standard murder case, a life sentence wouldn't be something that Indiana would typically push for, but prosecutors are pushing for it in this case. Now, prosecutors have also filed charges against Ryan Smith, McClure's boyfriend, and Tammy Hazley, Kinsley's grandmother, for neglect resulting in death. Now, each of their cases are pending. Smith and Hazley are expected to have their case heard at the end of 2025, and McClure's case has been moved to next year. Now, Kinsleigh Welty hadn't turned a month old before DCS had received their first report in 2018 that she was being neglected and living in poor conditions. Now, the department then placed Kinsleigh with her grandfather, Brian Welty, between the years 2018 and 2021, while they investigated the case according to the complaint. Now, the allegations of the report were sustained on January 28th, 2019, and McClure was convicted of neglect of a dependent in 2020. Now, Kinsleigh, for some ungodly reason, was united with her mother sometime in 2021. McClure would briefly lose custody of her children later that year when they were taken to a hospital with marks, welts, and bruisings. But the children were returned to McClure's custody after DCS failed to present a medical witness at the ensuing fact-finding hearing. So these children had documented signs of CA, and DCYF couldn't get his head out of his butt and get a medical, witness of any kind to say this. This case is infuriating. Oh, good Lord. I can't even say the word. I'm so pissed off. This case will piss you off. It would be almost 2 years later that DCS would receive more anonymous reports, one on November 6th of 2023 of neglect and CA involving Kinsleigh, according to that complaint. Now, that report alleged that McClure was not feeding Kinsleigh, was laying hands on her, left marks, and would force her to stand for hours. But according to the complaint, the case manager ultimately labeled the allegations unsubstantiated just 2 days later, quote, despite never having made face-to-face contact with Kinsleigh. So they never saw this child, never investigated, and let her stay with her craptastic incubator. Now, this pattern would continue after DCS received 3 more anonymous reports of alleged neglect and abuse on December 5th, December 12th, and December 14th of 2023. Now, all these cases were again considered unsubstantiated after the caseworker failed to locate the family. On January 25th, 2024, DCS received a report that Kinsleigh's older brother had been missing from school for several days. Now, the following day, the case manager was able to make face-to-face contact with Kinsleigh's older brother and determine that he was safe and closed the assessment as unsubstantiated yet again. Now, Welty's attorneys argue that in the complaints that although DCS case managers were able to locate Kinsleigh's brother, they did not attempt to locate Kinsleigh during that visit or during any of the follow-ups of any of the unsubstantiated complaints. There needs to be a rule, if there isn't one, that says you simply can't do a drive-by check-in, which is what we believe happened here, Laker said during a press conference. Now, court documents reveal that DCS case managers had one more opportunity to locate and try to save little Kinsleigh after they received another anonymous report on March 3rd of 2024. Then on April 9th of 2024, a Department of Child Services caseworker visited McClure's home after her newborn daughter had tested positive for THC. Now, the caseworker made physical contact with the infant and determined that she was safe. When the caseworker asked about Kinsleigh, McClure told the worker that she was with her grandparents. However, a few hours later, Indianapolis Metropolitan Police officers would find Kinsleigh near death in the closet of her mother's home. Now, McClure called, Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, the officers, after she claimed that her daughter had collapsed and began gurgling. Now, when officers arrived, they found Kinsley severely malnourished, emaciated, her bones protruding. She was covered with waste all over, human waste, active lice. I mean, this was awful. McClure told the police that she regularly confined Kinsley inside the closet and then blocked that closet with a dresser. When they looked inside the closet, they found it smeared with human waste, 3 empty bottles of Ensure, and a hard, uneaten peanut butter sandwich. Kinsley was rushed to Riley Children's Hospital and unfortunately passed away. She was 5 years old and weighed 21 pounds. Y'all, I can't. This happened in my home state, and they let it happen. So we have to get this out. They failed so egregiously. We have to get it out. I am sorry to bum you guys out. I do have palate cleanser videos, but this is absolutely needs to be named and shamed. We need to get eyes on this. I will be making a standalone video of this, so please share it out. Because this is the only way we get stuff moving. When the public gets mad enough about this, then new safeguards that will actually save children need to be put in place. Kinsley Welty's grandfather hopes that the lawsuit might change policy and ensure that other children do not suffer because of the failures his granddaughter experienced. I want to see policy changes, Brian Welty said. They complained that Kinsley was starving, but no one had seen her, and then they closed the case. He wasn't sure what events led to his grandfather falling through the cracks, whether it was due to a lack of training, staffing, or misunderstanding the policy. The family hopes to find out these answers via a lawsuit. Brian Welty believes that if DCS had put in the effort to meet with his granddaughter and actually document her injuries and neglect, she would still be alive today. When she came to us, she was very sheltered. She did not want any interaction with anyone, Brian Welty said. It took me a long time for her to have that real trust with me. Brian Welty's eyes teared up as he spoke about the brief time that he had Kinsley in his custody, remembering how she loved to play with princesses in a toy castle they bought while she lived with him. We had a wonderful relationship while she was with us, Brian Welty said. I believe this is when she actually felt love for the very first time. So, yeah, I know it's a really, really hard story, but if you could help me share this out, I will be covering the cases once they go to trial, but this is egregious. It's near me, and I do want to get it out. Now we need a bit of a palate cleanser, and it is a Wednesday.